O'clock. All right, Ashland County Zoning and Land Committee, Tuesday, August 5th. We'll call to order. First on the agenda, roll call.
Blake Ellefson,
Here.
Gary Eater,
Here.
Pat Kinney,
Here.
Jim Schultz,
Here.
Paul Wilharm. Is Paul Wilharm online? All right.
Okay, next up, we'll do public comments. We'll open it up for public comments online. I don't have anyone here, but we'll keep it open. We'll ask one more time. Public comments online. None in here. All right, wrapped up with the public comments. There's no public comments. We'll go next is the approval of agenda.
I make a motion, we approve today's agenda. This is Jim Schultz.
Thank you, Jim. We got a motion?
This is Pat, I'll second.
All right, we got a motion, a second. All those in favor of the approving the agenda as is? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Carries. Next, moving on is number 4, approval of minutes. Today, we're approval of the zoning and land committee meeting minutes, June 10th, 2025. So those are the ones from the previous meeting. Anyone want to make a motion to approve those?
I can make this, Gary. I'll make a motion.
Oh, that a boy, Gary. Thank you. Gary made a motion. And we got a second here. Looks like Pat's mic's on.
Pat, I'll second.
All those in favor of approve? Aye. Those opposed? Nope. Okay, so the approval of the zoning minutes for June 10th. Next up is the zoning discussion action items. A, issued permits revenue account for June and July of 2025.
Okay, you guys should all see that you got a printout there. June of 2025, looks like we brought in $14,645. 21 of them were building permits, 8 sanitary, 4 non-plumbing, and 7 grading permits. And it's broke down there by counties or townships, if you look to the right. And for July 2025, it is grand total of 11,140. 16 building permits, 10 sanitary, 1 non-plumbing, and 3 grading permits. It's pretty much on track from the previous years.
Why are some of these in red and different colors? Does it matter?
Yes. So over on the right-hand side, and I will move those. It's a little tough to see there. But the red is turned in after the end of the month deposit. And then the light blue is issued by Madeline Island Zoning Administrator. Purple is credit card, green is cash. And then I believe it was either July or this one upcoming in August, there's a dark blue. And that is showing that there was a credit from 2021. So those are just highlighted items to differentiate the difference.
Is there any questions? Pat?
On the Solson Road LLC, can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so that is Daryl Joma. He
Oh,
bought
yeah.
that property.
But he's less, his name shows up on the other sheet then.
So what I do on our spreadsheets is sometimes we have plumbers that pay for sanitary permits. And so what I do is I write the person who paid for the permit and then who the permit was actually for.
Yeah, I saw Daryl Joma earlier today, but I missed him when I was looking at,
Mhm.
had looked to the right further and didn't see him. Yeah, thank you.
So yes, that's in the town of White River we see. And he he built, he's got the second of 4 houses going right now that he's building there. Planning on renting them out with possibility of selling after a while.
And you kind of made a comment that this is on track with previous year. It's been pretty steady.
Yeah, it may even be just a little behind, but it's pretty much on track.
And, where we are, it is hard to kind of give a shot in the arm for maybe growing net new construction. I think we talk about that as our county, and I know Dan wants to hop in because he's like, hey, this isn't your ball of wax, but net new construction in Ashland County is pretty low.
Mhm.
It's on the low end of the entire state. And so just looking at our book, I'm saying, hey, and everybody I talk to down in Marengo wants 40 acres and stay away, right? And nobody wants that like 5 or 1 acre parcel that has like a whole bunch of shared wells and stuff. And I think there's this education around that and how we incentivize or something. And maybe it's not something we talk about here, but I think it's an issue that we have to kind of think about if we want to grow in the right way. Is our net new construction, if we stay in the lower half or bottom all the time, nothing's going to change in our overall financial picture either. It doesn't help us financially. So anyways,
Yeah, I just want to say the new net new construction numbers just came out. And our rate for the current year is double than what it was last year. So we're at 1.15%. We beat Bayfield County. At least it's up.
Mhm.
But I did forward that to you. I already did.
The more dense housing, even if it is 2.5 acres from a farmland preservation perspective, that's important. But, another thing that this couple of years ago, when someone was out in my neck of the woods and wanted a deer hunt, and where I'm at, I got lots of elbow rooms, me and the neighbors both do, and so it's a good spot. And one of the comments a person made to me, it's from the neck of the woods where these houses are going up. They said to me that, if there's a house in every 40, it's really hard to shoot anywhere because you might hit somebody's buildings and stuff. And it's something that people often don't think about, when they all want their own spaces. As a couple of these young guys were explaining to me, it says it's hard to deer hunt because
Mhm.
you don't hardly dare shoot. And that's one reason to build a little more dense and keep more of these areas open.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people that like to deer hunt.
Yep. And that's one thing with what Daryl just did. He's got them on a shared well, and he subdivided it into 2.5 acre lots. So he kind of went the direction which we'd prefer to see.
all right. Well, does anyone have any questions for Bruce? Well, that's a good summary. So I think we'll go to number 6. No more questions. Land description, discussion, action items. Our first one is our favorite conversation, tax deed notices, our delinquent tax notices.
Yeah, so our list this month is really big because we just started sending notices for people delinquent on 2022 tax now, which is why the list has grown so much. Obviously, as time goes on and they reach their deadlines, the people will come off of this list. But that's pretty much it for the update for this item that I have. Are there any questions on any of the properties or the process?
No, I mean, I kind of, go ahead, Pat.
Kind of a broad question, not any of these specifically, but there's no shortage of older homes in the county, a lot of them in the city. And at some point, it seems some of the landlords are somewhat inclined to walk away from them because they're hard to rent and maybe going to get harder with that apartment complex going up in Northland, potentially being some housing a few years down the road. Is there anything that we can look at to try to be somewhat proactive or be more careful than otherwise so that we stay away from taking properties where we would rather not own them?
Yeah, so we don't have to foreclose on a property if it's not desirable for the county.
But how do we currently, are we doing something where we might look at and say, okay, they owe a few thousand in back taxes, but oh my gosh, if we take that, good luck on selling it, and we most likely end up, say, demolishing it. Are we at this moment in time looking at these properties and evaluating them to be more critical of do we take them or not than in the past? Because we might be seeing this more with the changes coming here.
Sure, I guess lately I have not been doing that. The past few years we've kind of been in limbo with the law changes. But I can be more critical of the properties in the future.
One thing I'm wondering is if the county hires a realtor, would it make sense potentially to work with that realtor to take a look at some of these properties? I mean, we can tell from the assessed values when they're not worth much. But even having said that, the house I got rid of it, the last house I got rid of at the farm was assessed for about 39. It was in no way livable because of water issues in the basement and whatever. But the assessor says, I got to assess you something. The reality is that house had to go. The assessed value wasn't enough to tell you it wasn't livable. So that we have an idea if we could actually sell that or not, or if it's something we want to stay away from, because demolition isn't cheap either.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that's something we could talk to the realtor about and just have like a, conversation. We're thinking of taking this property here. Can we go take a look at it and see what your thoughts are? And they could give us a ballpark maybe.
Yeah.
I think, and this is the hard part, is that the law was up in the air. Now it's changed. Our county had to rewrite. Now we're back to, okay, we have this glut of both tax delinquent properties that we might have to take back, but then we have a glut of properties that we own,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We do not benefit one bit if we own a property and it sits in our books. It's what Pat's, I think, saying, because now as a taxpayer, I got to figure out how to pay for the demolition. I got to go and, all that stuff, right? And so we have to be, right now, as a county, we've changed our law. We've approved our ability to sell. We need to get this going, and we need to sell properties to put them back on the tax roll.
Mhm.
That's our goal. That should be our goal. As a zoning person who's now the chair, I want that to be our goal. So we don't own any properties that have any value, and the ones that don't have value, we gotta figure out how to get the property put into a disrepair or raise situation with the city now, because often it's in the city. And that's the problem we're running into, is the city's having all these demolitions in town because they're turning into these terrible situations, which
Mhm.
we've got 100 pictures of. We don't want that. And I think Pat's right. It can turn real bad real fast if you get the wrong situation going. And so we just don't want to own property. We want it to be into the public. And I think having a realtor or two that can give us an idea of what's worth anything
Mhm.
and then what's not, and then like,
Yeah.
let's get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like a balancing act of, you know, there being consequence to not paying tax? And then, is this property worth taking to then sell? Do you know, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, and that's.
That's the only thing that I struggle with, is how to quantify that.
Well, individually, each situation is
Yeah.
completely different,
Right.
right? And you can't quantify it until you actually physically go and be
Yeah.
like, okay, this is not,
Yep.
and then, but I think what I'm trying to, and Pat, I think has been giving me kind of like, hey, man, don't forget, these properties that we built up just in a portfolio that we own, we gotta get, like, chop them, chop them, chop them,
Yeah,
chop them.
yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I mean, and the only reason we were really holding on to them was because of this lawsuit. And now
Yeah.
that we're all through that, I think we can move ahead with that, and
'Cause
we won't have
even-
such a backlog of held properties anymore.
Even hearing from the city now, they're trying to get more active and they're finding that neighbors are very interested in taking the property, and instantly it goes back into a taxable property. And so anyways, I just wanted Pat to hear me say that, because I think he and I are on the same page, and he's been mentioning to me that, which is great that we have, which we want to go to that. Are we ready to keep, or do you want to say anything?
Well, maybe Pat wants to chime in. Pat had me contact corporate counsel about an idea for some of these houses that that might need to be torn down. Is it legal to sell a developer a property that will otherwise be raised for $1 on the condition they make it habitable within, a year or whatever it is we choose? So like that property that we have to raise at the end of Main Street, that's the one I'm looking at right away because that would cost us money. Is it legal for us to sell it to somebody for $1? And then they make a new house out of it?
I mean, legally, as a property owner, you get them to sign off on like every type of disclosure that says as is,
Yeah.
and then you fully educate them on what it is so they know, and then you,
I think the hang up there is because the state law was changed to say that we have to make an attempt to sell it at market value. But then afterwards, it's probably that afterwards of what can we sell it for? So definitely a question for corp counsel.
We still have to try to do exactly as Jen suggested there, but this is the challenge, as you said, where's that spot between, if we take it, we know we can sell it and cover what we're owed or a good chunk of it, versus it might end up being a raise order and now we're stuck with that expense. But somewhere in between, I would add to what Dan said is, I wouldn't just sell it to anybody who says, yeah, I'll take the house for $1, and then it sits, and then this whole headache continues for everybody. But rather, I think we'd have to have a contract and a qualified buyer, someone who has the resources financially and/or skills to do the actual rehab. So let's say it's a younger guy or business that's looking to rehab houses and is willing to put in the work and expense, and they're looking for winter work. And yes, we have good reason to believe that this particular person or company could rehab that house within a time frame of a year or something that we put into a contract. So we'd have to be selective about who we work with and then have a contract to meet that. And then if it's in, say, the city of Ashland, I think we're going to have to work with the city on some of these properties, because while we might be owed taxes and have some overhead in this, if they're going to raise the property, I'd assume they want a clear title. So we'd have to release the lien we have for the taxes and whatever. We could contribute releasing that lien on the taxes if they're interested in raising the house and acquiring the lot and putting it back on the market. But some of these people that own rental, I've kind of heard this through the grapevine. It goes sort of like this. With the apartment complex with Northland closing, people leaving, a few people leaving, don't have the students here, but potentially housing there. Some of these people own nothing but low-end houses. And if there's not a market for those, then are they going to walk away? And how does the city and the county protect themselves? In some ways, that asks the question, what assets, including real estate, could the city or county go after to try to protect themselves from being stuck with a house that needs to be raised that nobody wants and the land owner wants to walk away from? So I think you and the
Well,
rest are Dan.
I think I have an example. My neighbor passed away. His house had a fire. His house is now sitting in this town of Ashland, city of Ashland, in a burned function. People break in. It's bad. It's bad, right? The lot next to me has value, significant value in the amount of like 40 to 50, maybe 60,000, depending on the buyer, right? But it's stuck in probate. So right now, there's all these things that the city attorney is dealing with, and I think that's a question that I kind of ask is, do we actually act as the foreclosure function for the city of Ashland properties? Or are we just outside the cities? Like they deal like City of Mellon. If it's a house in there, do we foreclose on it for them?
For property taxes?
Yes.
We can foreclose on anything within the entire county, whether it's in the city, the village, or a town.
I guess.
But we don't foreclose for the town, we foreclose for ourselves because we are owed the taxes. We pay off everyone in full.
We're paying them basically these taxes that we're supposed to be collecting that we're not collecting.
Right, we
the-
pay them the taxes that they like levied so that we can have that whole lien on the delinquent tax that we can just take the property, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess, so you're working very closely with the city of Ashland.
We really don't have to work with the city on foreclosures. I mean, because it's just the money that we're owed. We're owed the delinquent tax.
And again, I guess. part
Or
of
maybe
it-
I don't understand what you're asking.
So like the property by my house, it's delinquent.
Yeah,
They're not paying taxes to the county.
Right.
Right? It's on the list. The guy, he's dead. Now his other property is worthless. They're not going to pay more taxes.
okay.
We should foreclose on that.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. And again, I think that's what we need to do is just be, yes.
Yeah, again, it's that balance of because sometimes the committee's like foreclose, 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 but then other times like today, the committee's like, well, we have to see if it's worth it or not. And so that's kind of the balance we have to achieve.
So property being in probate or whatever form of settling the estate is going on, if someone had a trust, for example, that doesn't preclude the county from taking the property.
No.
The beneficiaries of that trust or estate would have to sort out the consequences of the county taking the property. And so in that sense, if the county did take that property, now that house itself might not be worth anything, there's demolition cost. But with that lot next door, this would be a case of the county's working with the city and we have something worked out where someone says, yep, if I could get those two lots, I would build a house. And if the city and the county work together,
That was the question.
we could,
Do you work together at all for?
but some of those, I think it probably makes sense to, because if we sit, nothing happens there. There's no taxes, there's no tax base added.
Yeah.
And there's still a building that needs to be demolished. And while it is in probate, there's at least assets potentially there that if a raise order was issued, that the estate would either have to pay to raise it, or if they don't want to, then why should we wait? We just, with the city, get on with dealing with it and trying to get something built out there, because it's a good place to build.
I guess not to mix the message. I think we want aggressive foreclosure in situations where it monetarily pays itself back. I think in situations where it does not warrant it because of value, we do not aggressively foreclose. So that's what I think the message is today.
Yeah. So then to determine whether it pays itself back is by utilizing the realtor.
I think meeting.
Because I don't think I'm qualified to make that determination.
Well, right, which, yeah.
In this particular case, if you got a house that needs to be raised and there's an adjacent lot, to me, that's a city-county discussion on the future of that property where the goal is to get the house raised, the lots sold,
Sure.
and a house built to add to the tax base. And that one probably we are working together with the city to make the best of it for both of us, because they benefit too.
Yeah.
And letting the thing sit doesn't do any of us any
Right.
good.
And I really haven't been contacted by the city until this year about properties being raised. So I've never like worked with the city in the past on these foreclosure properties. I guess that's part of my confusion of like, what do you mean work with the city? So,
Yeah, this is a new effort by the city to, brand new effort by the city to take down some of these blighted properties.
So there's been a lot of public pressure on the mayor and the city administrator because the situations have gotten out of hand.
Mhm.
And I think as a county, we have to play a part in that, is what Pat's saying. Is some of these properties end up ours
Right.
for worse, and for worse. And then we got to pay to take care of it, which sucks. And then the problem with Pat though is when you start talking about stipulations, the stipulations have to be the same for each contract that you enter into. You can't go in, hey, I know this guy, I'm going to do a stip like this. And that's what the city is struggling with when they go to sell a property that they own. They're trying to put a stipulation into it that they have to build within 3 years on the lot. And I think we don't want to be too aggressive in stipulating things if we're trying to sell stuff, because we just want to get rid of, personally, and it's just my sense, but the city's got to, they're aggressively, and then each person has to ask for a waiver of that stipulation if they don't want to have to build within 3 years. Say it's an adjacent landowner and they're buying it. Dan, do you have anything?
Oh, no. Well, I just heard back from corporate counsel. I forwarded you guys the email.
So again, I think we're doing good. I think we're on the realtor submission part now. Is that, or do we? We're on the property subject to tax deed, but then it kind of morphs into the next one. So I think we should focus on that. What we have here is the realtor RFP submission, which I have just one, right?
yes,
Yeah.
that is all that we received. Yeah. So I sent a big email blast out to all the area retailers, realtors, for an RFP for selling these properties. And we got the one response back from Anthony Jennings and Crew Real Estate. Just got it back before end of day yesterday. Or got it back during yesterday. So I don't know if you want some time to read through this or if we want to go ahead. I did read through it myself. It seemed fine to me, the proposal.
I did reach out to one other realtor and he said he had no interest, for whatever that meant. So did anyone else respond at all? Like nothing? No one?
Crickets.
Crickets? Do we follow up with phone calls and say, hey, we're gonna shut this down, or we feel fine with one? I guess that's
I'm fine with Tony. I
okay.
mean, He'll try to sell the dogs also.
Pat?
A lot of these properties, if they look at the list, there's not, a lot of value to a lot of these. And so it can be a lot of work and expense for whatever it sells for. And so I think as the county works with a realtor, at least me personally, I expect you're going to have some conversations for some of these parcels that are worth, say, less than $1,000. And so the realtor said, okay, if you want me to sell you for this, I've got some time and expense into this. And you're going to have to be reasonable and work with someone to get these off, the county's list and back into private hands, because they'll only pay property taxes once someone else owns them. And we might have some expense up front for some of these really inexpensive ones just to get rid of them. And if that happens, so be it. And then some of these houses that are marginal that we might think they should be raised, but Tony might find someone that says, yep, I've got a guy and he will rehab this in the next year or two and get it back on the tax rolls and it'll be livable and it'll be decent as opposed to, you know, we paying to demolish it or left and then we just get it back dealing with this. I'm expecting at least, there's going to be quite a few conversations where you have to try to meet each other and see what's reasonable and take that long view of getting it out of our hands, back on the tax rolls and into something that's an asset for Ashland County. And I don't really need to know the details from parcel to parcel, but I would like to see you guys work together and accomplish that. And we have no tax base when we own them.
Can I just ask one, and maybe this is foolish, but so we got a property someone wants to buy for $3,000, right? That's way more than what is owed, or way less than what's owed long term. And we say yes. We give you the authority to approve that. You say yes. Are we able as a county to then pay him like a higher amount, like a fixed fee for each property sale? So there's more incentivization, because if it's just 0.06% of a $3,000 sale, the incentivization's gone. But if you pay someone, let's just say 500, 750 or $1,000 per sale, there's incentivization. Hey, I'll sell that lot for, I know a guy that'll buy that for $5,000 if you pay me $500. Boom. So I'd like to look at structuring our the way we pay to incentivize the realtor, less on the dollar amount, but more on the transaction. If Jen, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I know Tony had put in here, his commission rates, the typical commission rates. But he said they're negotiable and can be discussed upon services expected and required. So if we want to change that, I guess we could.
Well, I think again, as a county, we don't want to ask him. We want to say, and this is part of our incentivization, is that we're willing to pay a fee of, let's just say, $1,000, which is a lot, right? For some of these really small properties. It's not a lot for a lot of real estate transactions generally.
Sure. My question is, how are we going to determine that per parcel?
I think we make it every parcel, and then if it's more than 1,000, it's would be based on the sale price of the property. So if it's a sale price of, let's say, 100,000, and you sell it for 100,000, well, he would get his commission rate.
Right. So you'd say the fixed rate of 1,000 or the commission rate, whichever's higher.
Yes.
Okay.
So we would incentivize, because again, these small ones, like a $3,000,
Right.
you're getting paid like
Right.
$100, and
Yeah.
and you're like, well, and what he's saying is that the realtor is selling dogs because we have dogs, but they could be someone else that likes fleas. We don't know. Someone likes someone, so they might take it. They're a neighbor, they don't mind it. And so I think just, I'm not saying that it's going to change anything, but I think there's more incentivization than for the lower end ones where it's just a city lot or a little county lot that might have some value, but
Sure.
so that's just my thought.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about with that, and maybe we have to check the statute, is, so I know according to the statute, we can, when we have to give money back to the former owner, we have to give them the excess proceeds and we can take out, the taxes and the cost of selling the property, like the realtor fees and stuff. But I'll have to double check if it's like, reasonable realtor fees or if there's any kind of weird language, you know what I mean? So that the county can't just say,
And that
well,
was
we're
why
gonna take.
if it's 750 or if it's 1,000, what's the
Yeah.
reasonable realtor fee that we can charge up? Like it'll pay this per
Yeah,
transaction. Because to me, if I'm a realtor and I know that, if it's easy, I just, and that's what we want, is as much as possible to come off our books and go onto the public.
Right.
Earlier you said 0.06%, which is 6 parts out of 10,000. I think you meant 6%. You said 0.06%. So anyway, but I think you and the administrator and Tony need to have some conversations. And then if there's something you want to bring back to us, bring it back to us. I think all we're really trying to say here is the reason you got one proposal is most of the realtors looked at this and said, I'm not spending all my time and money trying to sell something where the commission
Definitely.
isn't much.
Yeah.
So we want a long-term relationship.
Yep.
Ideally. And then it works for, everybody and.
Yeah.
And then we unload these.
If we change that, should we ask other realtors or no? Or are we kind of done with that?
I think there's details that have to be worked out between staff and Dan and the realtor that go beyond what we're seeing in this proposal.
Mhm.
It's the really inexpensive ones. I think the language that's in this proposal allows latitude for them to work through some details that they think are reasonable and keeps the realtor engaged.
So then I think what we need to do today is are we okay giving her the authority to go forward with Tony Jennings? I think that's kind of what we have one RFP submission.
And I'm assuming that Dan would be involved with looking things over to see if things look good, the legal issues and stuff. I'm also bearing in mind that as a county, we're choosing not to have staff do this. Meaning dealing with these parcels that aren't worth much, there's a cost to the county and staff time. We shouldn't ask someone else to be compensated less than what we would compensate county staff for their time if they were doing this. In other words, let's say it took you 10 hours to get rid of a particular parcel. If we look at what 10 hours of staff time is, we should expect to compensate the realtor something too. So I think you have to have latitude, and I think the proposal allows for that.
So are we saying, just to be clear, that we tell Tony that it's a minimum of $1,000 a parcel or 6%, whichever is greater? Okay, I'll give Tony a call tomorrow. Yeah, because the alternative is this committee has to set the values of each property.
Well, and Pat, I'm sensitive to what you're saying about they're gonna hourly. And I think if we make this contract such that there is a minimum threshold, there's a bit of latitude for, hey, some of these should be maybe easy. And that's what we want a realtor to take advantage of is our staff, not trying to be rude, but she shouldn't have to sell. So I think this is the best way, and it follows our policy, to go through a realtor to set that market value so that if someone comes back and says, hey, this property was $3,000, and then 10 years later, their family says, no, that was worth way more. Well, at the time, we sold it through a realtor.
Right.
That's market value. And I think that's what strengthens this whole thing now is we've worked through all the mechanics. Now we've got Mr. Jennings. Let's let Jen and Mr. Jennings and Dan meet and kind of come up with a plan on each property and then work with making sure there's a minimum threshold of what we said was 1,000 would be fair.
Yeah.
If anyone, yep.
But Jen, what you said a bit ago, and I know you'll remember doing this, but it's really important that whatever a realtor is compensated, that we're protected within the state statutes now of not overly compensating a realtor. I mean, we can do it, but it can't count against what the previous landowner would get. So let's say a parcel sells for 5,000 and we say a realtor is going to get compensated 1,000. And then we're collecting some back taxes. So if that property owner gets some back and they say, hey, why did the realtor get $1,000 or whatever number it turns out to be? We need to know that we are following the law to make sure that we're protected, because if there's proceeds that would otherwise go to the landowner, we have to be able to defend that. And you talked about that earlier, and that's a really important issue to research and address and make sure we get right.
Yeah, and I'm just overly cautious about that because I know that these law changes are so new and things are being litigated, and I want to be really careful that we're not getting ourselves into a bad situation, I guess.
And my sense is if you think about the dollar amounts that we're talking, and I don't know, but generally there's going to be a fairly sizable, or at least a delinquent balance of something with the interest and all the fees, plus the cost associated with it, that if we're selling something for 5,000 or less, that's likely less than what we have against the property. And so we're taking a loss. And I think that's where if you're taking a loss and you have to pay a realtor $1,000 as a county, you're like, that kind of sucks, but that's okay because now it's taxed, right? And I think and now it's earning taxes. And so again, this is a good conversation. I feel good that we got to this point. I want to just say that the horse is now dead and we have just whack, 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 beaten it and kicked it. And Pat is ready to move on.
It may not be dead.
It's gonna come back. It always comes back. It will come back. We're gonna have this conversation next time. We'll be like, this is what we found out. Nothing is worth anything. So
I'll send an email to corporate counsel with those concerns.
just mentioning, yeah. Pat?
From a budget standpoint, there may be some parcels, as Blake just said, where we sell them and the proceeds are not enough to cover all of our costs for back taxes, staff time, and a realtor. We may have to put up some money to get rid of parcels to get it back on the tax rolls, which then gives us revenue in the future. From a budget perspective, for the zoning budget, do we need to consider putting some money in the budget so that as the county works at selling parcels, if there's some where frankly, we have to make an investment to get them back on the tax rolls, the zoning department has money in their budget to cover that?
Well, we have over $800,000 sitting in contingency. So, I mean, we'll have contingency money in next year's budget. So, I mean,
Would you propose that's where
yeah,
it
we
comes
would,
from if need be?
yeah, we just cut,
Okay.
that's what we do, yeah.
Okay.
That way it's contingencies for unexpected expenses or,
So
And I think
so it would be the land description budget that it would come out of. I'm not sure how I would charge his services to that fund. Okay,
I think, and one of the things that I was gonna say is that we've talked a lot about the city wants to raise properties. We as a county want to be aggressive in if having to clean up a property, like Pat's saying, if it costs money, it's better to pay. And so just giving you like the latitude to think now if there's things like that when you're looking or hearing about properties that are big problems like what we got, like try to get ahead of it. That's why I mentioned like the city stuff, because most of the problems are within the city of Ashland and we're the county, so we get to play with it. It's like our sister. Like we can't choose that we're there. But so I think just ensuring that because the city's pounding the chest of, hey, we want to clean up these drug houses. Well, if we have to put some money aside as a county, let's do that this budget cycle to help push, anyways,
okay,
just so you know, we support you in that.
okay. Maybe Dan, I'll talk to you later about working that because I already have an idea of which budget account I would put these expenses in. So
Okay, so that was a little different than the Realtor RFP submission, but I think we all agreed here that the RFP that Tony Jennings is good to work with corporate counsel to come back and finalize that, and we don't need to see it again at this committee. You're free to work with him and start listing and coming up with property ideas.
So can I get a motion to approve moving forward with Tony Jennings?
Sure.
This is Pat. I'll make a motion to approve Tony Jennings as the realtor the county hires.
Jim will second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving forward with Tony Jennings as our realtor? Say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, moving on to the plat approval, move to board. Ooh, we got the town of LaPointe.
Yeah, so this is kind of different. We don't get these very often at all. So this is a subdivision plat proposed subdivision plat located within the town of LaPointe. By state statute, there's a bunch of requirements that the surveyor has to get and the developer have to get with creating a new subdivision plat. One of those is that it has to get county review and approval. So once, we received this, I sent it out to all the people who normally review like our certified survey maps. Got all the reviews back. And we've basically said it's good to go with just a few minor corrections that we sent back to the surveyor. The state has reviewed it, also sent their comments back to the surveyor. So at this point, all I need is for the approval of this plat to get sent to the county board for approval.
And so this subdivision is gonna obviously increase lots quite a bit. There's like what? This is just one of them too. There's two of them, I think. Isn't there? Or is there just one?
No, there's just 2 pages
Okay.
to this plat. But yeah, there's 10 new lots going here, so and I've been hounded by the surveyor and the developer of when is this getting reviewed? But so they're already selling off lots and people are chomping at the bit to build. So 10 new
All right.
lots
Okay.
building, yeah.
Pat,
This is Pat. I'll make a motion to approve.
we got a motion?
Jim, second.
That's a good second, Jim. All right, so we've got a motion and a second to approve the updated plat. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Good job.
Okay. Do we know, just as a quick reference for me, do we know when the next county board meeting is? So I know when I can put that on the agenda and so that I can tell the developer.
September 16th.
Okay. That's a bummer for them.
Yeah. What? No, there's not. And we moved up the one in September because WCA.
Okay, well, there we go. We're scheduling next meeting. And it sounds like we are due for a meeting next month to look at something again. Wasn't there? No? Budget. That's the budget. Remember the budget? Okay,
And I think you want to do it earlier in the month rather than later,
because we have to approve the budget.
because finance is probably gonna have to have 2 meetings in September. I know, but
It's fine. It's fine.
well, because we have to get the publication. Um,
I'm joking. Yeah. It's just the painfulness of it all.
the 9th, October 9th is when we have to, or
Okay.
October 2nd is when we have to send it to publication.
So does anyone have a, okay, go ahead.
Are you thinking we need a zoning meeting to approve the zoning budget?
Well, that's what you talked about earlier, but we don't need a zoning meeting if we want finance committee just to approve it.
I mean, it's gonna go on the finance meeting agenda later,
On the 21st.
the 21st of August. Regardless, because it's better to do that, and as long as it's nothing unusual, then that should be fine.
No, it's all just essentially the same budget with the pay raise and updated insurance.
So we don't need another zoning meeting just to approve the zoning budget ahead of a finance meeting. It's nice to have it on the agenda, but it should be something that's fine, just sending to finance.
I think having a couple people on the finance committee on zoning helps. I think for next year, we just want to be sensitive that we have a meeting in that August timeframe for zoning, so it times in better. Because this year, it's really too early to give this to us, but then we don't have another meeting till after the finance, so it's kind of. But thank you for having this ready and prepared, even though it didn't get in there and we can't talk about it. But
So a few months from now on zoning then, from your perspective?
Yeah, I don't need, I'm
good,
surprisingly not needy this time.
and it's not that we don't want to meet, but I think for everyone's sake, if there's nothing dire, I think we give it a 3-month pause until after budget season and giving you latitude to work with Dan, with Tony. So let's look into October. That too, yeah. Let's do October.
It's 2 months from now.
That's probably good.
November would be 3 months.
All right,
from now.
November, sorry, November. November 4th or 11th.
That's fine, but bearing in mind if something weird were to happen, that would be a county board day. Yeah, I mean, with the budget, like if we get hung up at the end of September and we can't get to publication, November 4th would be the alternate to approve the budget.
Go to November.
So I mean, we can always cancel zoning if that's the case.
Well, let's do November 11th then. I kind of want it before too late in November. So we'll do November 11th at 3 o'clock. And that's that. Last item.
This is Pat, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
That sounds good. All right. We got a
Jim will
thing.
second.
All right, all those in favor?
I.
Aye. Those, okay, we're adjourned.